Greetings, everyone. Tanya Brockett here with Halogen Inc. And I'm so excited to share an interview and time with Heather Hummel Gallagher. Now, you're going to be so excited about the story because Heather has been through some things that I don't think any of us can claim. So, Heather started as she's a former English teacher, and she followed her grandmother's steps using words and the written word. Heather is also a native of Greenwich, Connecticut, where her parents and her five siblings filled the church pew in Dinghamtown Church. Eventually, though, Heather ventured away from New England and spent 3 decades traveling and living everywhere in every corner of the United States. In 2014, she had a near death experience, and her life catapulted into something far greater, including, well, something good like marrying her husband for the first time at the age of 53. She became a wife, and also, after this experience, became a pet intuitive. So Heather and her husband Stephen have three dogs: Kizzy, Luna, and River, and they live in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Murphy, North Carolina. Absolutely beautiful place. Heather holds a Bachelor of Interdisciplinary Studies with high distinction from the University of Virginia, which is my alma mater as well, with concentrations in English and secondary education. Heather has been such a joy to know, and I'm so glad to introduce her to you today. So, welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You know, you and I go way back. When I was thinking about who could do this interview for me, you were the first person and really the only person that I wanted to reach out to because we have this long history of being writers together and entrepreneurs together. And so you know this story better than anybody, better than even my husband now. So, because I wasn't even married at the time. So during the summer of 2014, I began getting these low-grade fevers. And I was sleeping 12 hours a day. I finally, on the weekend, went to a doc in the box and they said, oh, it must be Lyme disease because I love hiking and being in the mountains. So they gave me antibiotics and sent me on my way. Well, the fever went away, but as soon as the antibiotics finished, the fever would come back. So I went through that over a period of almost 2 months of on again, off again antibiotics, and people just really, these doctors just shooting arrows in the dark, hoping that it would hit and work, right? So finally, on a Friday, the fever had come back, and I was able to get in with my regular doctor. She put me on a new round of antibiotics plus a steroid to really knock out whatever this bug was. That was on a Friday afternoon. Wednesday morning, actually Tuesday night, let's go to Tuesday night, I'm feeling better and I'm packing because I was leaving the house that I had been in for a few years in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I was moving to New England because my goal was to photograph all of the lighthouses on the New England and really eventually the entire Eastern coast. Because not only am I a writer, I'm a avid landscape and seascape photographer. So that was my goal. And I was packing up my boxes and my two dogs, were with me. That was Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, I get out of the shower and my heart rate catapults to 257 beats per minute out of nowhere. I didn't know what to do. So I lay down on the bed and the king size bed was shaking because my heart was pounding so hard. Now, for a little bit of backstory, I have a congenital heart defect. So I was born without the pulmonary valve back in 1965. So I had quite the long history of really understanding my heart and knowing when something didn't feel right. I had had two open heart surgeries already, one at 9 and one at 25 years old. At this point, I'm 49 years old. This was new to me, though. Like, I had never experienced anything like this before. So I'm laying on the bed, and suddenly it drops really low, like into the 30s. Now, I know what my heart rate was because I'm also an avid cyclist. So I had a heart rate monitor that I quickly put on and was able to see what my rate was. Well, when it dropped to the 30s, I was like, okay, at least this is functional. I can get up and start to try to get ready for my day. It didn't even dawn on me to call 911 just yet. So I get dressed and go into the kitchen, and my two dogs are in the living room. And I start putting together my breakfast and a glass of orange juice. And I'm walking across the kitchen. And again, it shoots back up to the 257 range. At that point, I blacked out. When I came to, I was on my knees, still holding my glass of orange juice. And I look around the room and I see my dogs on the couch. And my first and only thought was, I cannot die and leave them here. I lived on a 400-acre farm. I was a writer and an entrepreneur. So it's not like I had to be at an office or school when I was an English teacher at any time. I had wonderful friends in Charlottesville, but it wouldn't be unusual for me to go a few days without talking to one or two or three of them. I could have easily have just passed away right there, but I was not going to let that happen because of my dogs. They were my world, and there was no way I was leaving them. So somehow I managed to get up and go across the room to get my phone and call 911. They immediately sent people over, of course, especially being cardiac. I lived about 25 minutes from the University of Virginia Medical Center. So by the time the two ambulances came, it was still another half hour before they got me loaded, let alone down to the emergency room. When he loaded me in the ambulance and I looked up at the flashing red lights on the screen and it read 257 beats per minute, even though I knew that already, I had to make sure that the medic understood that. So I was like, that's my heart rate, right? And he said, yeah, I'm actually really surprised that you're conscious and talking to me right now because nobody's ever conscious at that level heart rate. We finally get to the emergency room and, the doors swing open and you get that whiff of hospital antiseptic air. And I was still conscious. They rushed me down into, a room in the emergency room. And suddenly I'm surrounded by cardiologists and interns, I'm sure, and other doctors and nurses, and they're all surrounding my bed. The main doctor says, so we're going to try two things. We're going to give you a medication that will hopefully adjust your heart rate, fix it. And if that doesn't work, we're going to have to use the paddles. But don't worry, because we're going to give you an amnesia drug that will make you forget the paddles. So here I am, my heart rate's beating 257 beats per minute. The bed there is shaking as well. And I looked at her square in the face and said, will the amnesia drug make me forget my old boyfriends? And they're all looking at me like, who is this woman that's knocking on death's door, joking around? I didn't get the answer. All I heard was one of the nurses say, her heart is beating so fast, the bed is shaking. And then the next thing I knew, I'm out. They did obviously have to use the paddles. My experience is not one where I saw God and Jesus in heaven. My experience was a situation where it catapulted me to the next level of spirituality and how that unfolded in the years to come. But it was a point in my life where I was making plans to move to New England, photograph lighthouses, to totally change the direction of my life. And it's as though God said, nope, you're staying right here, right? I need you here right now. And I did not have a choice. And I spent the next 8 weeks on IV antibiotics, followed up with another open heart surgery. So that morning was October 8th, 2014. And that was the day that I learned it wasn't my day to die.
Having that experience, though, boy, it kind of gives me chills. How did that affect your connection, your relationship to God?
That's exactly it. It's like, people talk about God's plan, having a focus in your life and a purpose in your life. So I strongly felt it was my purpose to go to New England and photograph these lighthouses. I'm always the one who needs a goal and a purpose and a meaning to life. Prior to this, I was very spiritual. We were raised Presbyterian and went to this little quintessential New England church in Connecticut growing up. We all lose our ways sometimes along the way, but I had a very strong spiritual foundation to begin with. But this experience really left me wondering, okay, why did you keep me here? I know my reason was because I wasn't ready to leave my dogs, but it was so much more than that. And I knew that. I mean, I half jokingly about that, but I knew that he had to be keeping me here for a higher purpose that I just didn't understand at the time. First of all, I'm focused on the next 8 weeks of being on IV antibiotics, literally at midnight, 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m., I had to administer through a PICC line in my arm these they look like little Christmas tree ornaments filled with penicillin. Of all things, I needed penicillin. So every 6 hours, I had to administer the antibiotics. So for the first 2 of 6 weeks, my whole focus every day was just making sure I stayed alive and that the antibiotics were working so my heart wouldn't do that again. At the end of the day, by the time I got home, which was about 10 days in the hospital, I had enough time to really sit there and go, okay, why are you putting me through this? You could have let me come home to you, but you wanted me to stay here. Now, some people with their near-death experiences get that answer while they're over there. What's different about my near-death experience is that the answer unfolded over the years to come. So my connection to God grew much deeper, much stronger. Literally the next September, I met my now husband. And as you said in the intro, my first marriage was at the age of 53 years old.
It just makes you think about, all right, so maybe part of your journey was to meet your husband and have an impact on his life. As you think about that, what are some of the biggest takeaways that you can share with us?
Well, I think the most interesting thing that's happened from this is as I started connecting more deeply with God, my own intuitive side really started opening up to the point where I now have a really strong, deep connection with animals and an understanding of them. I now offer animal connection readings, which is interesting because right after my surgery, as I'm recovering, my beloved yellow lab, Stefan, went through emergency surgery and was not going to quite make it long term. He made it through the surgery. And I was talking to an intuitive friend of mine, and I just wanted him to kind of tap into Stefan and let me know what was happening, even though I knew in my heart that Stefan was going over the Rainbow Bridge. I needed to hear it from somebody else. And Steve, as the intuitive, would not give me that answer. And so now, suddenly, I have become very strongly intuitive with animals. And I have had people reach out to me about their beloved pets and they're passing away or they're already on the other side. And I'm able to connect and communicate messages to the people that I'm reading about their pet that gives them the comfort that I needed so long ago. It's interesting that God has kept me around to be able to be that voice for people that I wasn't able to get when my dog was passing away. So that was a complete surprise to me when this gift started opening up and unfolding. Initially, it just unfolded as my intuition being much stronger and having a much deeper connection with spirituality. But it kind of went down the path of pets because everybody knows that I'm a huge dog lover. And I would be in intuitive circles and people's pets would come through to me, but nobody else. People would start reaching out to me privately and asking, or they would send me a picture of their pet and say, do you pick up anything? And I would give them information and they would be like, oh my gosh, that's right. In terms of a takeaway, it gave me a gift that I didn't have prior to the experience. And it's such a profound one. And it means so much to me because I am such a dog lover and I wish I had had somebody to turn to when my own dog was passing away. I think the biggest takeaway to sum that up is what we think might be our purpose in life. It could be tied in with a bigger purpose that God has for you and to just be open to those situations, talents, gifts, whatever you want to call it, that God gives you.
And what's interesting is that your experiences up to that point, it seems, especially being a dog lover that you are, because we know dogs rule, right? That those experiences and your being a dog mom allowed you to recognize that intuitive nudge and let's get her in front of other people who need her gift.
And it is such a blessing to be able to give that comfort to people who need it. Ultimately, it's giving all the credit to God that I had this gift and I'm able to give that information to them because it doesn't come from me. It doesn't come from Heather. It comes from Spirit. I'm just the vessel for it. But to be able to be that vessel is the greatest gift that I've ever had. I mean, my whole focus and goal up until that near-death experience was being a writer, being a photographer, and that was Heather. But God had another definition for me, and that was being this pet communicator, which I gladly embrace. It just wasn't anything that I said, I'm going to grow up to be a pet communicator. It was a gift that came through the transition of going through that near-death experience that I am just so grateful for. And it's been a very profound experience for me, but also for the people that I'm able to, relay these messages to. Initially, it started out as people knowing that I love dogs, but I've also done other podcasts where I've connected with cats too. So I'm not limited to, it's all the domestic four-legged friends that we all love and cherish. But in many cases, they do go on to get another pet, and I've been able to guide them for the right fit for their family. One example is this woman up in Maine whose beloved two male dogs passed away over, a span of a few years of each other. And I told her the next dog is going to be a female. Your boys want you to have a female because they want you to have a nurturing female dog with you this time. And sure enough, she ended up with this adorable husky named Elsa. And she's everything that I described her that she would be. She's had her for about a month now. And she said it's been the best healing process. Because a lot of people, when a pet passes, they don't want a replacement. They think that that's the end of love. But so many times, their dog or cat wants them to adopt another pet because they know what great pet owners they are. Dogs and cats are unconditional love. I'm your one and only, but they're not like that. They want wonderful pet owners out there adopting because there are so many available who need good homes. They're not jealous about it.
I mean, that's a great thing for a pet owner to learn because losing a pet is just, it's heart-wrenching. That is a way that they can gain additional comfort. I have a question about what some of the benefits have been for being able to tap into greater intuition.
So that brings up a really excellent point, actually, about the difference with my near-death experience compared to some others. Some other people, as we mentioned, and we know, they see God, they see Jesus, they're in heaven, and then they're told why they need to come back. And then they come back and explain their whole story. And they are truly magical and amazing experiences. And I love listening to their stories as well. Mine wasn't like that. It was in your face, but it was a very different way. So for example, there was one day I was writing at my favorite coffee shop in Charlottesville, and I was going home to have lunch and then go for a bike ride. So I'm on the way home debating this bike ride, and I end up at a red light, and the car in front of me had the license plate "Go Bike." So see, I'm already speechless. I was like dumbfounded that here I am contemplating a bike ride and there's a license plate that says "Go Bike." That was so in my face. So yes, there are definitely signs that are so in your face when it comes to intuition. And that was the first real license plate sign that I've seen. Over the years, they kept coming at me. It was like once Spirit realized that was their way of speaking to me, I almost had to shut them off. It was like every day I was getting a license plate sign. In fact, there was one time you were driving home and we're on the phone. I was at home and we're talking, and we were debating whether or not it would be a good idea to start a blog. I mean, we're dating ourselves here because this is back when blogs were just starting and people were actually debating whether it was the next best thing. Kind of like people with AI now. You're like, Heather, you're not going to believe the license plate in front of me. I'm like, yeah, I probably will, but give it to me. It's right on, except it's WRITE on. And we were laughing because here we are talking about whether or not writing a blog was a good idea. And there's the license plate right on. I mean, situations like that, we can laugh about them, but at the same time, it's so clear that spirit is trying to communicate, with us. And being open to that, again, once I was open to license plates, they kept coming and coming and coming at me. Whatever somebody's avenue is, or opening up to spiritual connections, spirit guides, angel guides, guardian angels, whatever you want to refer to them as, once they figure out their way to communicate with you, where you'll see it, you'll see more and more of it. Everybody's on their own journey, and when you're ready to open up, you'll start seeing them.
One thing that's interesting is with your near-death experience, you can open up even more to that. I mean, you've seen the license plates beforehand, but now you're opening up to a whole new way. You're especially being a pet intuitive and so forth. So that allows you to be even more open than you were before.
Yeah. And in fact, one of the early license plates I saw was I was on a bike ride a few months after my first dog, Hummel, passed away. And I was riding on the back roads in Albemarle County, thinking about her and imagining that she was running along on the fields next to me, and how wonderful it was because she was able to be off leash and run and be free. Well, the next car that passed me was a pickup truck with the license plate Paw 4. PAW, not PA, PAW, the number 4. And I was like, she really is riding next to me. It's fun to be able to connect to spirit. It's not ghostly and scary and spooky and all of that. It doesn't need to be. I mean, the license plates that I see are just remarkable. Those 3 examples alone are some of the most profound, so obvious you can't deny them. So
I do agree that some people feel that being in tune with something that's not for in this dimension, no, I can't see it, I can't touch it, I can't taste it, that kind of thing, that is scary, or that is like way out there. Everybody is born with this God spark. Everybody has the capacity to be intuitive.
right.
But an experience like yours allows you to open up to something more.
Yeah.
Having a near-death experience is like that's definitely gonna create some wake-up calls.
It definitely does. A lot of times it is when you're still and allow yourself to be in the moment that you will start to see these signs or hear intuitive pieces that come to you. It reminds me so much of Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. That sums it up right there. Being able to be still and be with him so that you can have that connection. I've driven cross country 10 times, and 90% of the drive time that I've done in all those drives, I didn't have the radio on. I didn't listen to anything. I just be still and know that I am God, and allow that the essence of that message in, and be rid of all the distractions, and this is long, all the drives that I did cross country were long before we had the distractions of phones and anybody could talk to anybody whenever, wherever, however, as long as you had 2 bars on your phone. So it was a different time back then. And I think that that had a lot to do with my ability to be able to connect with God leading up to the near-death experience. So when I went into tachycardia, it was basically ventricle tachycardia and the heart rate of 257. When I went into that, and they had to knock me out and do the paddles as the years unfolded after it, since 2014, how my life has changed. And just for the record, I did end up living in New England. My husband and I spent the COVID summer actually in the coast of Maine, working at a campground. We lived in our 5th wheel, and I photographed several of the lighthouses in Maine. So my goal and my mission and my purpose was fulfilled, at
Okay.
least in Maine. So, he does have a way, and his way of getting you there might just be different than I need it now, I have to do it now attitude. And the way that it ended up happening couldn't have been any better. And there's no way I could have dreamt that for myself.
And that's an important message right there, allowing the path to unfold in your highest and best way.
Yeah, you really need to
Here.
be still so the veil can lift. For everybody, the thickness of the veil is different, but when that veil starts to lift, then eventually that connection is allowed to open it. For a while, mine was, I had a veil just like anybody else, but I knew from a young age that I was different because I was born without the pulmonary valve in 1965. When I had my first open heart surgery in third grade of 1974, there were no other kids in my school or even probably in my state having that surgery. So I started asking the why questions at a pretty young age. All right, God, you kept me through my first surgery at 9 years old, and then my second one was at 25 years old. I was, obviously a lot wiser at that age, but not much more spiritual, really. I just knew I was different than most people. Just having those two open heart surgeries at 9 and 25 years old left me with the questions, why this?
And it's a lot to question, but also to be excited about. Meaning, you had to have these open heart surgeries, but the knowledge that you were brought out of each of those for more and greater experiences, just like, wow.